Hey, what's up guys, it's Oakley, and we are back in Rome 2 doing a 2 versus 2 battle. I am going to be here fielding the Lacedaemonians, the Spartan army. It's going to be pretty awesome. So my ally over here is going to be Tillus. So he has a big force that is in these big spaghetti lines, something you see a lot in multiplayer. Our opponents are going to be Parthia and then the Nervi. So it's going to be an interesting fight. Some of the rules for the battle where there's no more than 5 of the same, limitations on, I believe it was 12 melee infantry, limits on 5 skirmishers. So overall, pretty well managed fight, and I kind of like those rules. No artillery as well, keeps it fun, light, and interesting. Anyways, the reason I'm going to be playing as Sparta today is, well, 1, Sparta is pretty awesome, but then 2, behind the scenes, I have been working on a documentary over the past couple weeks on Sparta itself. It's probably going to come out end of October, so bear with me, but basically the premise of it is it's going to be called Misunderstood Moments in History, the Spartan Myth, and the whole idea is to tackle what is the Spartan myth. So the idea that the Spartans were these super soldiers trained and raised from birth to be the ultimate warriors, that they were, you know, head and shoulders above all their peers, and all that. So kind of tearing that down, revealing what was actually at the core of Spartan society, what made them good warriors, and kind of doing a compare and contrast to their peers. And a lot of it ends up being, yeah, much of what we think about Sparta is going to be actual myth. Some of that, well, actually, most of it stemming from the victory at Thermopylae. That was a big propaganda feat that before that, the Spartans weren't necessarily known for being the best warriors. Yes, they were one of the largest and most powerful of the Greek city-states, but that was just because of the landmass they controlled, and over time they'd kind of ground out their holdings in the south of the Peloponnese, which gave them a commanding presence, but they weren't necessarily known for being the ultimate badass warriors. And that kind of story came out of Thermopylae, the fated last stand there, which wasn't even intentional for the most part. Leonidas didn't go there with the intention of committing suicide. They weren't even expecting the Persians to arrive so soon. So kind of we go through that whole video and dissect the Spartan myth, and it's pretty interesting. So that's why I'm putting a lot of care into it, to make sure that when it does come out, I do really kind of do justice to the topic, because I figure it's going to be a pretty big hitter one, and it will kind of probably provoke a lot of responses from people who have this preconceived notion of what Sparta is. And so, yeah, I just want to make sure I have my bases covered when it comes out. So that'll be fun. Back to the battle at hand. Well, what have I brought to my build? The core is going to be, obviously, Spartan hoplites. That's what you would expect. I do have some perioikoi. Now, traditionally, obviously, the Spartans wouldn't have these, like, pikes. But I did bring it just because of the rules here stipulated that I could only have 5 max of the same. And so I decided to bring some pikemen. So there's 3 of these. Perioikoi would have been kind of people living in the Peloponnese. They were kind of, perioikoi just means the dwellers around. They're essentially the neighbors. Sparta had like a 3-tiered society where the Spartans, here the actual citizens, and we can put this on full. The Spartans were kind of, if you were born Spartan and you passed through the Agoge, you became a full citizen, and they shared kind of mostly equal rights. But then below them, there are 2 other classes. So the second below them were the perioikoi. These guys would fight in battle, but they're mostly like craftsmen, and didn't necessarily enjoy the full citizen rights of the Spartiates. And then the last tier is going to be the helots, the bottom class, the serf class of subjugated Messenians and other units and other kind of local populations that the Spartans relied upon to essentially do away with a lot of the tilling of the land that their Greek compatriots would have been doing for most of their days. So anyways, back to my build. Core of the Spartan hoplites, a couple of the perioikoi. I've brought some skirmishers, so 2 of these perioikoi peltas, and they're going to be here to kind of sit behind my lines to get large and anti-armor piercing shots on. Actually, I don't know if they have anti-large, but they do have armor piercing, meant to take out oaths sworn that come against me or cavalry blobs, so they're kind of circulating about. I've also started to hide these Gorgo skirmishers. These were a little piece of DLC that came out, not necessarily historically accurate, but basically they're slingers with some armor piercing abilities to them, so great against mighty horse and units like that. So I've hidden one of them, and the other one is hidden in the bush, so I don't know, or I don't want my opponent to know that they're actually prepped and ready to rebuff cavalry attacks in the rear. And then I have 2 of these Royal Spartans on the right flank as well. These are going to be, one is my general, the other one is just an accompanying force. These would have been probably the picked of the Spartans coming out of the Agoge who performed admirably. And then I have 2 mercenary Cretan archers, and they're brought here to just try and fend off the enemy. Meanwhile, my opponent directly facing me is going to be the Nervii, so he does have some of these Celtic slingers. You see these guys a lot. They're light, they're cheap, and they're good for kind of picking away at enemy archers because they can come in close. You're not too worried about losing them, and they have a lot of murderous fire that can take out archers. But he got a little bit too close, allowing me to do some early damage. In his main line, he does have some cheap Celtic warriors that are charging out after me. He's going to pop some abilities to try and get into an engagement, but I'm just going to pull out of that and shuffle back in with some of my pikes to rebuff him as the battle is getting underway. In his rear lines, he then also has Spear Brothers. He also has a couple Oathsworn units, and even more Levy Freeman and Mighty Horse. So you'll often see these units as well, Mercenary Germanic Scout Riders, light Jav Cav. You start to see that towards the end of Rome 2 once the meta kind of settled out. These are very, very useful. Get them into the back lines. They're very quick, very hard to catch, and they just come in here and harass. They can do lightning strikes on exposed skirmishers, and they can also help tip the tide of cavalry battles. In the center here, my ally Tillis is just holding strong. He's having a bit of an engagement against the Persians on this flank, but Camel Cataphracts plus Noble Horse Archers and a whole bunch of Noble Cav is going to absolutely destroy Light Horse. This is not an engagement. There is a Noble Horse here to reinforce, and Levy Freeman coming in, but you should never take this engagement without the support of other units. So he's going to get absolutely shredded, especially with these camels that have kind of debuffing abilities against cavalry. So he's going to handedly take the fight here, but he doesn't want to stay too long. Because here come the Levy Freemen to see off the cavalry and start to trade. One of the nice things about them is going to be their precursor javelins that are getting in here and starting to mop up. The main Persian corps is kind of, I guess, semi-historical. It has a big front line of these Eastern Spearmen with their big wicker shields just to absorb enemy fire, and they're going to be covering for a plethora of other units in the back, mostly going to be Parthian foot archers, but then he also has some kind of heavy infantry in the back line as well. So a relatively well-rounded force, and he should be able to kite the enemy, get the cavalry advantage, and just get around the flank. So I don't see this really going the way of my ally. Meanwhile, in this engagement, my opponent has continued to circle around with the cav. I've piecemeal selected to send forward some guys. So some Spartan hoplites with 2 Chevs are going to be tackling these Celtic warriors. They should be able to hold out. Meanwhile, my guys, I pulled up with my pikes, seeing as he was threatening with the big rush in the center. And if he's going to charge you, then I might as well throw pikes, and they can rebuff almost anything. So Spear Brothers are going to be thrown in, but they're going to be easy target. The other Spear Brother force does penetrate through, so I'm pulling out my Peltas and other archers. This is a good disruptive tactic, but I do have Spartan hoplites that I had kept in reserve to countercharge that to plug the gaps. I'm also keeping some Citizen Cav in the rear to rebuff his cavalry that is looking for a way in. Meanwhile, in the center, 2 Royal Spartans are going to be holding against Celtic warriors very handily. 2 more here, Spartan hoplites holding back the Celtic warriors. So this initial charge on his front is not going to do very well. It's gotten 2 kills over here. And 1 kill here. Meanwhile, this is at half strength already, so I'm buttoning up the front, which is what hoplites are wont to do. And I actually have both my mercenary Cretan archers here firing away at some Mighty Horse, already dropping to 37 men, so they're going to look to penetrate through. That's why I have my cavalry circling, so if he decides to go after my Cretan archers, I can just come in and charge, but you can see just how much damage they took, as well as a volley from these tribal warriors. So pretty happy with this defense, but this disruption here, pulling through with the Spear Brothers, is going to tie these guys down, and now the strategy is, hey, maybe he's not winning in the front, but he does have a whole bunch of these Celtic slingers, and they're going to be told to start to target my ranged units in the rear. He's hoping to see them off. Now, he could target my hoplites and other infantry from the front, but he's not going to do much damage, so he's going to try and get rid of my range advantage, which will then allow him to back off and seek a more decisive engagement. Meanwhile, over here, his Mighty Horse is continuing to pull through, but my archers are continuing to lay the smackdown on these guys, and I have clipped them with some Citizen Cav. Not the most powerful of units, but at least it's enough to tie down his Mighty Horse and allow me to shoot into them. He's going to skirt around his front lines with these Oathsworn, which I have to be wary of, one of them coming down the center. But that's why I did bring up some Peltas. Like I said, these guys are great for armor piercing. So I have a lot of units going to be firing into these Oathsworn, trying to take down their numbers before they even engage. But this is a bit of a penetration that we have to be worried about. The cavalry fight has gone to the Persians. Levy Freeman are going to be screening on this side, but take a look at this. Pretty devastating. Tribal warriors tried to get in the front, but this is what you see a lot of online players do. Keep cavalry nearby. The second the enemy charges in with infantry, you charge up with your cavalry, disrupt their blob, and then you come in with your own hillmen and other units to mop up. And then the cavalry just retreats after doing its thing. So that was really cost effective. Some hillmen are going to start to lose, but oh god, look at the crashing blow against Levy Freeman. Levy Freeman, like I said, can trade pretty well against cavalry, but in thin spaghetti lines like this, you got to be wary of a big frontal charge like that, it can knock them out. And so you can see it did a fair amount of damage. They will pick themselves up, and with some of their volleys probably punish the cav. So it's not the best of engagements. I'll see how this goes, but here comes the repeated hammer blows of the Eastern Cataphracts, again and again knocking back these guys and saving the strength on the Parthian swordsmen. So my opponent still, or my ally still has some Oathsworn in the rear, but those guys are susceptible to some late game action whereby, archers can focus on them, and then these cavalry that continue to knock down the units that are protecting them, these guys will be able to deal pretty handily with the Oathsworn. So he needs to get these guys into combat or bring some protection for them. Meanwhile, the waves continue to batter his lines. On this front, you can see I have a bit of a defense lined up. I have my spears, my pikes holding back the enemy, choosing where I want to engage, and his cavalry is still floating around the rear. I am getting Citizen Cav to charge after them. Killed a couple of his guys. These Jav Cav can probably kill me if I engage for too long, but that's why I have archers for some supporting fire. Cretan archers here have decided to turn about and choose new targets, focus fire on the Oathsworn, and then my Cav is going to pull back to the safety here because I realize, hey, there's an opportunity to strike at these skirmishers, and that's exactly where I'm going. Pelta is going to be dispatched as well. Let's watch some of my super heavy Spartan warriors dealing with these Celtic units. Holding the front here, Oathsworn are starting to tear through my Spartans, but some of the flanking shots with my Peltas have been pretty devastating. He has two Oathsworn actually starting to swarm around the side of the Royal Spartans. Royal Spartans holding pretty well, but they're down to half strength, so I need reinforcements. Cavalry here are going to punch through, and they're going to be going on a raiding mission against these skirmishers. Historically, the Spartans really didn't have much cavalry that they could brag about. The way they set up their society was that, hey, all the Spartans, if you're a citizen, then you're an equal, you're a peer, and the egalitarian nature of it kind of made that there was no upper class to then fill in the ranks of the cavalry, which is something you would have seen in a lot of other states because, fielding cavalry, maintaining them, equipping them is all very expensive. And so that's what the Roman aristocrats ended up doing is they, mounted up and were in the cavalry. And that's what a lot of other peoples who had, cavalry traditions ended up having their nobility. Persians, for instance, get on cavalry. But with the Spartans, with their kind of take at the egalitarian elites, in the hoplite, that really stymied their ability to have cavalry. Anyway, the enemy is going to start to collapse in on me. He's entirely kind of torn my units apart, and so now there's starting to be big gaps forming up in my positions. Luckily, at this point in the fight, the enemy cavalry has been whittled down to the point where they can't penetrate too much, and so even though my formation has lost a bit of its consistency, what you're seeing me do is on all fronts see off individual bands of units and be able to surround them with my other guys. So over here, the Oathsworn did finally kill one of my guys, but it was a 2v1 that leaves them at, half and a quarter strength. Meanwhile, up through the front lines, I'm continuing to hold pikes doing their thing in very key positions. So zoning them out here and also zoning some levy freemen out here. Cavalry is also going to circle back and they can threaten to hit the rear of these blobs, force them away. Levy freemen are going to realize that this is an issue, so they're going to come back and see me off, but that relieves pressure on my main force, allowing my units at the back, Perioike Peltas, to continue to fire into cavalry. These Gorgo skirmishers up to 38 kills with their armor piercing. Ooh, they do have a couple Oathsworn in amongst the ranks, and they're going to get charged by cavalry, but just not enough numbers there to do damage. And I can bring back my reinforcements to see off the enemy general, so he's going to be killed by the Spartan hoplites here. There you go. Some of them getting beheaded. So I am cleaning up the infantry. Cavalry still alive and healthy, which is going to be key. Because on this side, we didn't watch the last of the engagements, but judging by kind of what's on the floor here, it was just repeated cavalry blows against the enemy infantry. The Oathsworn, like I said, did finally commit, but now they're finding themselves isolated and susceptible to these big charges. And now the Persian player can choose to just not engage with them and just fire away with the Parthian foot archers into these big raggedy blobs of Oathsworn, and they're very tired, and so they're going to be seen off with minimal losses. So I really have to, take a look at that battle, examine the composition, and see that I have just enough to stay alive. The enemy is desperately trying to keep his scout riders alive, and you can see just how much sustain these guys have. Still alive, relatively cheap with 28 kills, this guy with 25, so they were doing a lot of damage to my skirmishers. Citizen Cav could chase after them, but they're bound to be isolated here. That could be pretty deadly. If he's able to get rid of my cavalry, then the Persians here have all the mobility in the world, so I have to try and save myself. Luckily, I do still have one of these Citizen Cav up through the center. He's been knocking back some Oathsworn, and I'm going to pull them back into safety while my general, the Royal Spartans, chases after these Oathsworn. That's not an engagement they want. They notice that this is going to be one of the last skirmishing units that I have, Gorgo skirmishers, so he's going to chase after them. Same thing on this front. His cavalry is going to try and get in here, so we'll see if I can save them. But it looks like my cavalry is going to be seen off, so I do need to find a little bit of safety. Cavalry is circling about to try and get around these Oathsworn and save my guys. Looks like the enemy is going to decide that this is where he wants to engage. So here come my ladies, pulling out of the engagement, the cavalry coming to save them. And so I should be able to beat off these riders. But now here comes the sandwiching of the Oathsworn. These skirmishers are going to try and pull through. Here you go. A couple of them get clipped, but luckily my guys did reinforce and they're dragging back the Oathsworn before they can clean up my skirmishers. So that's nice. I was able to save them. Meanwhile, here we clean up some of the remaining levy freemen that were trying to chase my cav, but utterly destroyed now. That's pretty cool. And now the Persians are starting to get their final victory. Looking over here, they are very exhausted heavy cavalry, which means they are liable to start, wavering and routing, and then also their I believe their stats get a bit debuffed when they're tired like that. So I do want to recover a little bit, but I don't want to wait long enough to give these guys the time to replenish. So I'm just going to pull my ranks up, make sure that I see off the last of these Oathsworn with my general, and then I'm going to recommit. I'm also a little bit scared of the Parthian foot archers, so I'm going to see myself kind of claiming the woodland realm here and just holding strong. Now, skirmisher-wise, I don't have very much. I am posturing. These mercenary Cretan archers are actually out of ammo with 105 kills on them, so pretty good. But yeah, they're out of ammo, and they're going to be meant to just draw fire from the enemy. Same thing with Periodic Peltas. They have maybe a couple jabs left, but otherwise being empty. But they do have shields, which means they can kind of stand there and take arrow fire pretty easily. And they're just going to be meant to try and shore up my guys. Hoplites are pretty tired after fighting a long battle, so my general is slowly going to move in. I'm going to try and pop some abilities like Second Wind. I did use it recently, however, on my citizen cav to get them back up to kind of full strength. The enemy's general is positioned on this flank. He does have horse archers, so I'm a little bit worried about them because obviously they can take a couple blows. They can probably kite and fire away at my cav. So what I'm going to do is just leave Gorgo skirmishers here to guard my flank and zone these guys out, and then get a big charge in the center. It looks like the enemy did want to kind of come in. I'm thinking that this unit is also out of ammo, which is why he has them kind of circling in the front to bait out strikes from my guys. Whereas these two units seem like they're getting ready to fire off volleys. So I'm not going to take the bait and fire into them. I'm going to save my ammo, and then I'm going to just bring up my heavy infantry to see him off. Let's see, he's probably turned off fire at will at this point, so we'll see who they end up shooting. But my guys are getting closer. And here you go, Gorgo skirmishers firing into the cavalry here. They realize their mistake, and they're going to try and pull out. But a couple of those shots should be coming in. There you go, starting to clip a couple of those warriors. So that's not an engagement they want to be in. Plus, I have Periodic pikemen going to be tasked with seeing them off. Here comes the main collapse through the center. Periodic peltas were sent forward to absorb that charge and allow my hoplites here to just brace and deal with those cataphracts. Meanwhile, in the center, my archers are dealing with his archers. Not quite sure who wins this engagement stat-wise, but everyone else is kind of just watching. Looks like these archers are also out of ammo here, so not super threatening. I decided to posture here, get my guys in phalanx formation, but his infantry are just going to skirt around the flank, not looking to engage there. Meanwhile, I was able to snipe the enemy general, I believe with Gorgo skirmishers, so he does commit against my citizen cav, who were sent into this engagement to tie down the cataphracts. But now, you can take a look at this. Here come the Royal Spartans, my general included, going to be charging in here, catching the cavalry. They are probably going to want to disengage, but my citizen cav still holding strong. 86 kills and 3 men left. Definitely being real MVPs here, and the general is going to be tied down long enough to be seen off. Back in the center, infantry is committing against my Spartan hoplites. My guys are fresh, his are fresh. It's a pretty even fight. On this front here, I do have hoplites against exhausted, or pretty shaken and diminished guys. So overall, I would say the engagements are going my way. Gorgo skirmishers are out of ammo, so they're going to just come and commit against these archers. And then finally, I'm going to circle around on this flank. General's unit does come back with 4 men coming in on my Periodic peltas, but they should actually be pretty good for taking out these cavalry. General's also coming in as well. He has 115 kills, so kudos to him. Meanwhile, the collapse in the center is ongoing. Spartans are circling around the Persians, and we're going to see them off. So with that, you're going to see an end to the battle. And there you go. They get one final kill against my Spartans before routing off the battle. So I do hope, or battlefield. I do hope you guys enjoyed this one. A little bit of the historical discussion in the beginning, plus some context, or some teasers, I should say, for what's coming up documentary-wise. So definitely stay tuned for that. And I hope you guys enjoyed a little bit of this historical gameplay. I know we haven't done too much of it in the past, but definitely I am listening to the comments and heeding your remarks with regards to getting more of this out to you all. So that's it. Let's end the replay. Take a look at the stats of my force. So I fielded the least amount of men, but got almost the most number of kills, tying Ragnar here. Most of the damage done by the Spartan hoplites. Pararokai pikemen, relatively cheap, holding the line against Levy Freeman, doing pretty well. Skirmishers also trading really well. This one with 111 and 1 chevron, good work. And Citizen Cav here with Devil Chevs, 87 kills. The other one with 112. So really good stuff. Not something you'd expect necessarily from Spartan cavalry, but overall, yeah, this army fended for itself pretty good. And I think I could have been defeated by Vindonissa here. You could see he had a lot of units getting around the rear. Had he been able to get these guys and charge into the back of a formed hoplite line, he could have done really well, but I did a good job of kind of buttoning up the back. My ally here, 808 kills, not doing super well. Some of his heavy infantry, actually Tribal Warriors trading well, but most of that was against kind of cheap hillmen and other units. The rest of his guys getting trounced in terms of skirmishers, just fired away and destroyed by the Persian archers, as well as the cavalry just being tossed to the side. So his heavy infantry did kind of what it needed to, but at the end, with only 808 kills, not doing that much. But then again, I guess my opponent didn't get that many kills against the Spartans. Let's take a look finally at Parthia. So lots of kills on these camel cataphracts and triple chevrons on them. That was into tribal warriors and oathsworn, so definitely paying for themselves. The cavalry corps really doing the most amount of work, followed then by the archers, and actually surprisingly enough, Persian swordsmen doing pretty decently. So that's it for this recap. A Pyrrhic victory. Very, very good stuff. So yeah, see you in the next one. And definitely check me out on Facebook and Twitter, where I give more teasers about what documentaries are in progress. And also please consider supporting me on Patreon, where, you know, the funds go towards paying artists and researchers to help produce these documentaries. That's it. See you in the next one. Bye-bye.